episode 710 of Longbox Heroes, the Lamborghini of comic book podcasts. I'm Todd, along with Joe. How you doing today, Joe?
I feel good.
That's one of us. I mean, both of us. Definitely both of us.
I want to lord that over you that I'm in comparison, perfect health.
That's right. That high bar that my health is.
Yes. Again, it's, and this is me bringing up the wrestling stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know the offer is out there to get you to watch the recent Dark Side of the Ring about attention deficit criminal extraordinaire, the Sandman.
Or you mean Human Bender?
Human Bender.
Right.
And, Human Bender was always in a shape. And then he talks about when he went to WCW, he got into better shape. And people would always say, it's like, yeah, he got in better shape for him. He still wasn't in good shape. It was just better shape for him, right?
That's right. That's right.
So again, if we're looking at the hosts of this show, I'm doing the best right now physically.
That's right, and it is a competition on the show. I do have to put out my PayPal link for that Sandman thing, but yeah, it is a competition, and you're winning right now. So I'm going to health up, Joe.
I think if someone subscribes to the $100 Patreon level, no, you said it was more than that. You said it was like $200, right?
Right, because I have to give you half the money, so.
Okay.
So I feel bad.
Okay.
I feel bad stealing from you. You wouldn't even know when you pay me, What
do we got on the show tonight, Todd?
Late books and omnibuy, and a special one-shot spinning out of a 30-year-old event. Cue the Patreon plug. And DC Comics v. The Germans, Dawn of the Trademark show. Conventions. The latest edition of my Walk Down Lois Lane with our good friend Beckie, where we stop and smell the roses and the thorns. What we read last week, which is Ain't No Grave #1 and Captain America #9. What we're looking forward to this week. Todd and Joe have issues where we reread Gail Simone's Secret Six in its entirety. This week is issue 3 of the first ongoing series. And finally, in TV and movie talk, we have the first 2 episodes of this season's Doctor Who, where the Doctor meets babies. I'm sorry, I mean space babies. And a future evil version of the Hulk. Oh, no, wait, a different character who might be named something like that. And I can't wait to hear your opinions, Joe.
All right. Well, you're going to have to wait until the end of the show because that's how these shows work. We save that sort of stuff to the end, right?
Right. I was going to move it all around.
No, don't do that. So, we talk a little bit late books and failures at DC to get stuff out. But there is no bigger deadline failure, we'll say, than Jeff Johns and Mikkel Janine's Justice Society of America.
Right now.
Mm-hmm. So this is a book where issue 1 of the 12-issue series came out a year and a half ago?
Probably.
And we're still waiting on the last 3 issues of it.
Right. We believe it held it up, the 2 miniseries and stuff like that. But go ahead.
The 3 miniseries.
Yeah, that's right.
Because there was the 3 characters from JSA, the Sandman one, the Jay Garrick one, and the Alan Scott one. The Wesley Dodds one didn't get delayed too much.
I feel like that one didn't get delayed at all, to tell you the truth. If not,
yeah, but the other ones got really delayed.
Right.
But not as delayed as JSA. It's a bummer. Jeff Johns kind of shifted his power at DC, so I could certainly see doing his own imprint, his own books over at Image is going to take priority over pretty much everything else that he's doing. Yeah, it's just a bummer.
Yeah. I mean, I was hoping to see the end of this book, but and then whoever's going to take it over, because they probably have plans for JSA that this probably all derailed. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I always liked the JSA, but I think we've discussed this before. We thought it was time for him to move on from JSA, Jeff Johns, I mean, but we figured he'd finish the story before he did that. Yeah.
And again, it's a whole thing about people finishing their stories. But one could imagine, as you mentioned, I think at the Fan Expo in Philly 2 weeks ago, Jeff Johns was asked about this, and he said that DC does have plans after his thing is done. So I'm silver lining. Hopefully whoever's coming on after the Jeff Johns 12 issues, it's just they're writing, so they have all these issues ready to go, so maybe it can be like a weekly book.
Give it to Jeremy Adams.
Yeah. But another thing that's late, and there's no real reason for this to be late because it's all done with even less content in it, when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, when it was announced that the DC versus Marvel and Amalgam Age omnibuses have been postponed, delayed, whatever, from their original dates from the beginning of August to the end of September.
I just, with Omnibuy, I know they only have so much room in the printers and stuff like that. So I know we this week there's a Justice League International volume coming out, and then I've seen the pictures from both Gail and Nicole Scott, the artist, that the Secret Six ones are done. Hopefully, because they got their comps, that means that those will go out on time. Then there's a Hitman one in July. I know when they start rapidly putting them out, some of them go by the wayside. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's only so much that you can get done at one time at the printer. So I feel like that's a problem, but I have zero proof to back any of that up with.
Yeah, it's just a bummer, like this got like a lot of fanfare. This is something that people have been looking to get collected for a very long time. And now the fact that it gets delayed almost like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is, you just worry when those goalposts keep getting moved and moved and moved, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I've said it on the show before, I had like my question volumes of the Omnibuy moved by several months. I had the Justice League one for a while, moved by several months. Not this one. This one's hitting on time. So I wouldn't be scared that they're not coming, because if they're in the hopper, it's going to happen.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Hopefully they don't get delayed any further, and hopefully everyone has them underneath their tree for Christmas this year at the very least, All
right, all perfectly bound and no mistakes.
Well, again, and this is like an all DC news week this week. We're talking about things that got announced and delayed. Hopefully this doesn't get delayed, as this got announced to be in what would be, I guess, the August solicitations. And that is, it's as people, Todd and myself, who do a Patreon show where we look at 30 years ago this month's previews catalog, and we get to see some of these milestones that are hitting and coming as they approach, Right.
It's almost like we picked the perfect year to do, Joe.
Like we could have did like 17 years, or we could have did like 24 years, right?
Or even 30, if we did 20 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But 30th year anniversary, we just talked about it at length over on the Patreon show for previewing the past this past week. But DC is doing a 30th anniversary 0 hour commemoration, right?
Yep.
And the press release that comes out for it, I feel as though the press release gives it short shrift, because it makes it feel like it's just a Green Lantern storyline. From the press releases, for those unfamiliar with 0 hour, the storyline was one of those pivotal moments in Hal Jordan's journey as Parallax. I'm going to put a pin in that right here, Todd. Journey as Parallax, right? Where he killed all the other Green Lanterns and stole their rings and destroyed the power battery. Secretly, we didn't know it at the time, but releasing the yellow impurity, which was what created the Sinestro Corps. So there's some good to it. Its journey as Parallax. All right. After the devastation of Coast City, we now know that the entity of fear infected Jordan and sent him on a quest to refashion the timeline to restore his home and those that were lost.
Yeah, that parallax narcotic he had a little off the show.
So again, obviously the way they're shaping this, it's more of a Green Lantern event, but this was, a DC universe spanning event. This was promoted as like, hey, all those inconsistencies and issues that we tried to fix with Crisis on Infinite Earths, we're going to fix them here.
That's
Spoilers, right. They didn't.
Right. We'll fix that again later with Infinite Crisis.
Well, again, if you remember, what was supposed to fix the things that they broke with Zero Hour was supposed to be Hyper Time.
Oh, that's right. Mark Waid's, gift to DC, Hyper Time.
Oh my goodness. But I am excited about this. I will be picking this up as a 0 Hour apologist. I lived through 0 Hour. We got more good than bad out of 0 Hour. And the more good is summed up as the James Robbins and Tony Harris Starman comic.
Pretty much.
I think that outweighs any bad, no matter how many bad there are, because of how good that book is.
Yep. No, there was some bad spinning out of that. So we get a 30th anniversary of 0 Hour special, which I'm going to get, because I was all the Green Lantern stuff at the time, and I was big on 0 Hour and all that. I don't remember if I got this, because they did a bunch of 30th anniversary Death of Superman specials. You know what I mean?
I did pick, so they did the gimmick where it was the 4 different covers too, right?
Right. So I think I got the first one of that.
They did the Death of Superman 30th anniversary hardcover last year.
Right. Then I didn't get the 30th anniversary of Nightfall special.
No, I didn't get that.
Did they do one?
I'm sure someone will tell us if they did.
I don't think they did a 30th anniversary. So I look forward to what the next 30th anniversary is, and you could look forward to it too if you listen to the Patreon previewing the past. So, but I don't know. It's just I feel like we're going to get a few more of these because we're kind of in the sweet spot of like the boom of DC for a while. So we'll see.
So are you intimating a 30th anniversary of something that happens at Marvel?
No, nothing happens at Marvel 30 years ago.
Okay. So something does happen at Marvel 30 years ago, but Marvel actually did a 20th anniversary celebration of it.
Oh, I know what the 30th anniversary is of. I've just tried to block it out.
So because they did 20, I certainly hope they wouldn't do 30, and I don't want to speak into existence. But negative, positive, with DC doing all these things for 30th anniversaries of stuff like this, I wouldn't put money on it, but it fills me with hope that they're going to do something for 30th anniversary of Starman at the end of the year.
I still am on Tony Harris's Facebook page occasionally, and he says that he is right now, he shut down all future, because he was big at Fan Expo appearances, that he was shutting all those down. He might take a few at home commissions to do a project that he can't mention right now. And I'm like, I feel like that's the 30th anniversary special, something, whether it's a mini or a one shot of Starman. I wholeheartedly believe that. And then we need the 30th anniversary special of Walter West. That's what we need the 30th anniversary of, Joe. Remember that when Wally was a Hyper Time version and it was Walter in the cool costume that he had there?
That doesn't come up until 94. You were about a year away from that, right?
Right. Well, we do one special a year, and then maybe we'll get a Death of Green Arrow special and have Connor Hawk kind of a deal. They get just diminishing results on these things, but I can imagine them pushing a few things. You know what I mean? When they replaced all the heroes.
I could see them doing a 30th anniversary of the Morrison, Howard Porter JLA.
That, yes, I could see them doing that to bring, like, as the Titans are the JLA. I'm doing air quotes right now. Like the team, I could see them definitely bring the JLA back in the Magnificent Seven kind of a deal, as they did 30 years ago. You know, like, just muck it up for a while and then bring back the Magnificents.
But, you know, obviously, once we get into like 95, 96, 97, I doubt, like hitting, or, you know, I say that, but like the 30-year difference, I doubt that we'll be getting, I doubt that we'll be getting 30th anniversary for like Batman Cataclysm.
You never know.
But as I say that, we will certainly get something for Batman 30 Years No Man's Land.
Yeah, okay. I would encompass, because I wasn't thinking of it that way. I was thinking of Cataclysm as leading into No Man's Land, but yes. I could see something with all of that. You know what I mean? Because that was a big storyline, I remember.
And again, you know, we're looking so far into the future here. We should just be focusing on 2024 as opposed to 2025 or 2026. And just because, you know, I recently got it, you know, March of 1996, March of 2026, 30th anniversary of Kingdom Come is absolutely getting the push.
Probably on film too. You never know.
Oh, allegedly. If only, anyway, never mind. I've said too much. But so again, we can sit here and speculate. I liked Zero Hour for all its faults, all its foibles, the things that it was supposed to fix, it didn't, but it gave us Starman, so it can't be bad. Like no other events gave us that run on Starman, right?
No, and it gave us Fate and Manhunter too.
Not Primal Spencer Force? Manhunter though. So
no, did it give us Primal Force too?
Gave us Primal Force. We'll get to like the books that spin out of that. We'll talk about those in a couple months over the Patreon, and we'll filter a little bit of that over here. You know,
right? Yeah.
More DC news. It's like all DC news this week. So obviously, one of the properties that DC has been pushing to the forefront, trying to market a little bit more. The movie came out last year to varying success. I had my problems with it, but it was fine. But it looks like DC is, you know, still trying to put forward Blue Beetle. And the thing that I said then that I said now, that there's no reason that Blue Beetle could or shouldn't be DC's Spider-Man. At the very least, like Miles Morales Spider-Man.
Yeah, those are some big web shooters to fill, though. But I get you.
So as DC and Warner's are filing a bunch of trademarks to put Blue Beetle on a bunch of stuff, they recently got some pushback from the Volkswagen company, questioning their trademark on using Blue Beetle on certain things.
Right.
Which I think is one of the funniest things in the world. The fact that just now in 2024 that Volkswagen has decided, like, hey, wait a minute. People are recognizing this comic book character than our famous car that we kind of sort of don't even make anymore. It's more of a vintage luxury car, classic car, collector's car. Does Volkswagen even make a Beetle car? If only I knew somebody who knew stuff about cars.
I honestly think they mass produce it still down in like South America. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like there's like some factories that make them for driving around down there. But if not, they're still running in South America.
I was going to say a German company doing something in South America. It's a first time for everything, I guess.
That's true. The boys from Brazil down there. But listen, what kind of trouble could the Germans make, Joe? Come on. And now they're kind of fighting with it because they say they had it first. Like their copyright was 1938 or whatever, and DC's with Ted Garrett, Blue Beetle was 1939. Listen, if you can't trust the Germans in the 30s, who can you trust, Joe? Come on. Sheesh. Warner Brothers is going to win this in a walk.
Yeah. It was just one of those things when I saw it show up on the news wire. It was one of those things I'm like, oh, this is too funny not to pass up, you know?
That's right. Last week, alligators. This week, beetles.
Yes. And lastly, but not leastly, of course, just a little bit of news in regards to some more hard, fast stuff about some upcoming like movies and TVs and Disney Plus shows and things of that nature. So I don't know what's going on. Is A24 going on that like we're hearing stuff like this, or is there something? I don't know where this news is coming from. Okay, it's coming from somewhere, but it's being verified by all your usual outlets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Agatha series spinning out of the Scarlet Witch and Vision series, its date got moved up by a day. It was originally September 19th. It's now September 18th, and they're debuting it with 2 episodes on the debut and then a new episode every week thereafter.
Right.
We have a steadfast-ish date for the sequel to the Daredevil thing, Daredevil Born Again, where after they started filming something, they completely scrapped it and then brought back everyone from the Netflix show to do something again. Originally was supposed to be spring of 2024. Now it's going to be March of 2025.
Okay.
The Ironheart series, which was originally announced as fall of 2023, is now sometime in 2025. No definitive date, but the fact that they even mentioned it is something.
Right. Which I didn't even know what they were doing with that.
And then, you know, as things get moved out even further, we did get a definitive date for the Supergirl movie, which is based on the Tom King maxi series that is coming out in June of 2026.
Okay.
So I know they're still filming the new Jimmy Pistol Superman. I know they had a bunch of the different Superman creators, both current and past, at the set this past week. Mm-hmm. And did you see that group shot of all of them together on the set?
Yeah, that was cool. I finally did get around to seeing that.
Yeah, that was really cool to see. And, you know, we're getting, like, some promotional stuff for it. So the fact that, like, the Superman movie is far enough along that, like, okay, we can announce the Supergirl movie now and give it a hard and steadfast date here. Mm-hmm. And, you know, no movie has come out under the Jimmy Pistol regime. I'm a fan. We say Jimmy Pistol, James Gunn. I'm a fan going back to Romeo and Juliet. You know, when I've
heard that recently, but go ahead.
You know, you look at what he did for Guardians of the Galaxy over at Marvel. You look at what he did with Peacemaker over on HBO Max. I have all the hope in the world that Superman is going to be good. And I know we were supposed to talk about it last week. They released that image of, you know, the early promotional image of Superman getting his boots on.
Yep.
Last week, and I know you had said you would wanted to talk about it. I don't think we brought it up on the show last week. No,
there was a lot going on last week. Because I was saying, like, I'm not going to be that guy that I hate the costume. Do you know what I mean? Because I always go back to people who saw any photos of, you know, Batman costume before it, or Wolverine and the X-Men in their costume with lousy lighting and stuff like that. So I see that costume. He's putting on his boots to like, you know, save the day from whatever's happening. And I just feel like the suit is a little loose on him, but he also looks like he has scorch marks. And kind of the reason I wanted to do this last week is they were announcing that they're putting out the Jose Luis Garcia Lopez style guide. And I feel like the news dropping of that and this was not coincidence. I feel like that suit is going to get destroyed somehow, and like that's what they're promoting. But the Jimmy Pistol is going to surprise us in the movie with the classic blues and reds. You know what I mean? Like more like Superman 3, the best costume kind of a deal than the one that we see in the thing. I don't know. That's just me because I feel Jimmy's a big fan of, you know, classic comics, and with that announcement of the style guide, I could see him going, that's what it should look like. Have no proof to back this up whatsoever, but I definitely feel it's a bait and switch.
Just a gut theory, if you will. Yes.
Right. Something to get people to talk about it and either complain about the suit or love the suit or compare it to Christopher Reeves or Zack Snyder's or whoever's. So they talk about it. And then it's like, here's the real Superman suit, you know?
Yeah, it's just that as long as people are talking about it, right?
Exactly. Like, I always sum it up to when they said that James Bond was going to be a female agent. And I was kind of like, you didn't watch the last movie because you didn't see it. James Bond, Daniel Craig retires in one of the movies. And they're like, the next movie is 007. Or they weren't saying James Bond. 007 is going to be a female agent. They're like, James Bond can't be 007. They're like, we never said James Bond. We just said 007. She takes his spot while he's retired. And I'm like, yeah, but you nuts. You complained about it for 8 months, keeping it in the spotlight, and they all get free publicity. This is all about free publicity. We should do some wacky stunt to get Longbox Heroes out there, people talking about it. That's all.
I'm not dishonest enough to do staged PR stunts to get people talking about us. Right. I just attempt to do a good product and hope that speaks for itself.
Right. I'm with you.
Yeah. A place that you can go and talk to creators about the good product that they put out is at the bevy of comic book conventions that are going on this weekend all across the greater United States. Whether you're going to the Tidewater Comic Con in Virginia Beach, Virginia, which I'm sure will be lovely this time of year. Scott Snyder, Dan DiDio, Tom DeFalco are going to be there.
Ooh.
Moving further west across the United States, the Motor City Comic Con in the greater Detroit area. Tom King, Mitch Gerads, Cully Hamner, and Bart Sears are going to be there.
Nice.
But then we have Comic-Con Revolution in Ontario, California, not to be confused with Ontario, Canada. Got the big heavy hitters there this weekend. Dave Johnson, Adam Kubert, Dustin Wynn, Amanda Connor, Jimmy Palmiotti, who is actually doing a new Kickstarter, as he is wont to do, of his Wildstorm DC Series 21 Down that never got finished. You know, we talked last week about DC series that never got finished. Right. I think whatever was solicited for that, the last 2 issues never came out. And Jimmy is putting them out in his latest Kickstarter, whatever the rights reverting back to him, however that creator-owned thing worked with the Wildstorm to DC thing. Yeah.
I saw some of that. And DC had to give him permission to put that unpublished issue in there. So I don't know if they still own it and they're letting him do a collection because whatever. But he definitely was like, they were nice enough to give us permission to put the unpublished issue in there.
There you go. I wasn't sure how it exactly worked. I just knew whatever was unpublished by DC was going to be in with the Kickstarter project.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then, I don't bring it up very often, but at the Ontario Comic Book Convention from the world of sports and entertainment, one of my personal favorites, Samoan Joe, is going to be there.
Oh. And
one of Todd's personal favorites, the Honky Tonk Man, is going to be there.
That wasn't the movie Clint Eastwood was in. That's not the version.
And Greg the Hammer Valentine is going to be there. And I was scouring on the site, and I did not see them offering a rhythm and blues photo op, and apparently these people there don't like to make money. I don't know what to tell you.
You know what I saw the other day? I saw online, and the Paul McGann. That's the doctor who fought your favorite master.
Mm-hmm.
He does now.
Eric Roberts. Yes. Yes.
I don't know if I mentioned this, but Paul McGann does when he goes to conventions. He has a different suit that he wears now for the audio plays that they do like photos and publicity shoots. But he shows up at the cons in those costumes so he could do the photo ops in the Doctor Who costume. And he'll bring a TV quality TARDIS to take the picture in front of and everything. And I'm like, that's how you make money, folks.
That's a hustler.
The nearest con he was at, I would have my traveling boots on.
And I would see if I can, 2 people removed to see if I can get a hold of Eric Roberts to get him to show up too.
Oh, if he showed up in the Time Lord cape, oh my God.
Yeah, it's not that. This isn't that kind of show.
Right.
But I'll still ask, do you think Eric Roberts remembers that he's in a Doctor Who?
Yes, I think he does, because he was talking about, he was recently, I saw, like, when I do my reels, you know what those are on Facebook, Joe? He was talking about remembering Heath Ledger, because he was in that Batman movie with Gary Oldman, if you remember. He was in that, and he was talking about, like, it's like everybody's talking about, watch out, Heath Ledger, he's the Joker now, he's in character. And he'd run the lines, and he was intense while he'd be running the lines, and he'd be like, do you think that was too much, too little? He's like, everybody get off that. He's like, so he seems very, like, coherent lately, if that makes any sense. So I do believe he remembers.
All right. Well, good for him.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have the links to those conventions in the show notes with this episode, along with information about the soon-to-be-named network at soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. Anytime any of the shows go live, of course, you could find them at their own individual websites. You could find them, of course, through your podcatcher of choice, but you could also find them in the one handy-dandy stop for everything, and that is soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. And that includes, of course, this show that you're listening to, Longbox Heroes, Longbox Heroes After Dark, Puzzle Warriors 3, Profane Arguments, Final Wrestling Place, We Need Wrestling, At Odds with Wrestling, Wings on Wings, Porch Talk, and whatever Ed might have cooking up here in the near future.
I'm breathless with anticipation.
Yes. So also be sure to check out some of our other friends and the stuff that they're up to. Go check out Mike Sterling's blog over at progressiveruin.com. Go check out our friend Kevin, who just celebrated a birthday the other day. His blog over at helliansteam.com. Go check out Rick Williams, the Chop Shop, at freekaratechops.storeenvy.com. Check out Jason Sandberg's Jupiter over at his Indiegogo. Get all the accoutrements, the coin, the postcards, the whole thing. Go check out Chris Runt's Battle Monsters over at fortressofcomicnews.com. Go check out our friend Davey of the band Cave People. His site, cavedomaincomics.com. He's got 3 different self-published comics. He's got new printings of some of the other stuff if you want physical stuff. Everything's available there digitally. Support local, small, independent artists, creators, comics, etc. And of course, if you do not have a comic book store in your area, or you do not have a good comic book store in your area, let our comic book store be your comic book store. Comics on the Green. I have the Facebook page linked up. That's where Dave puts up information about all the new releases. We're getting toward the end of that time frame of books coming in on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So that doesn't mean you only have to check the Facebook page once a week. Always check on the weekends for all the new stuff that Dave finds and cleaning stuff out in the backlog, whether it be 25-year-old candy bars, full runs of Avenger comics, all sorts of things hiding in that back room. Sign up for the mail order subscription service. Get your books mailed to you weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And if you do, there's a chance that you can get a sketch on the package from our good friend Beckie, who we're going to turn things over to now for her walk down Lois Lane.
Welcome back to my walk down Lois Lane. So there's a reason I've only been talking about Lois from the late 50s to the early to mid 60s. That's because in the 70s, they started to stop the Lois has powers, she sure wants to marry Superman, for a more serious shift to go along with the social matters of the time. Don't get me wrong, Superman still turns into trees, and Lois kissing him makes him so angry he boils lakes, but the writers wanted to tackle some real stories, like racial relations and the women's liberation movement. For the next few weeks, I'm going to talk about some of these stories, but before we tackle issues 106, 110, and 114, I want to introduce you all to Rose and Thorn. The original Rose and Thorn debuted in Flash 89 from 1947. Rose Canton was a woman with a split personality who had the ability to control plants. Her alter ego Thorn has red hair and was very Poison Ivy before Poison Ivy. She was a villain for The Flash and appeared in several comics, even having a husband and children while fighting the JSA. There is a storyline where the Amazons of Themyscira tried to cure her of her personality disorder, but unfortunately her story ends with her trying to hurt her family and, let's say, removing herself from the comics. Rose Canton appeared once more in 2012 for a one-shot in the New 52. Our second Rose is Rosalind Forrest, and her debut is a backup story in Lois Lane 105 from 1970. She also has multiple personalities, but she gained them after witnessing her father murdered by the 100 Gang. More on them this month. Her split personality manifests into a vigilante that comes out when Rose is sleeping. She doesn't have any powers, she just kicks butt. Her backup stories in Lois were good, and people liked them so much they started to make her a series regular, and she began to appear in Lois Lane comics alongside Lois and Superman, starting with issue 114. That is an extra long issue that has the characters from 106, and that's why we're talking about it this month. This Rose also appeared in 1990's Green Arrow. She's fought Harley and Ivy. Yes, redheads in a green plant costume fight. She teamed up with Supergirl, and in a 2004 miniseries by Gail Simone, she retells her origin. She hangs out with the Birds of Prey, and finally, in 2019, Bendis has her join the Legion of Superheroes, where Lex Luthor tried to help her suppress her Thorn personality with medication. See, Lex is nice sometimes. If DC ever prints Rose and Thorn stories, I recommend reading them. There's a supernatural kind of element to a few of her stories, but it's mostly she's out for revenge, so there's lots of action in her tales. My favorite story is the one with the theater actress. Look it up because I don't want to spoil the twist. So next week, we'll discuss some 1971 Lois, and it won't be because editorial decided she needed to always wear purple. Seriously, fashion takes a real dive after Schaffenberger. Tune in next week for some more Lois.
Thank you very much, Beckie, of course, for setting the expectations for not only this week, but the coming weeks. The Rose and Thorn stuff is pretty fascinating to me.
Right.
Just because of the longevity of that character has, its roots going all the way back to the Flash and everything else that goes along with that character.
And with so few appearances, too.
Mm-hmm, right,
okay.
Exactly. And, again, of course, there's the mention there in regards to, even his current comics as the Bendis run on Legion. We got references to her, right?
Right.
And it's to even realize that Rose and Thorn got their start as a backup or a second feature, if you will, in Lois Lane comics, or like their resurgence.
Right, because the first one was like Golden Age Flash, which blows my mind. But my first interaction with Rose and Thorn, do you remember the miniseries with the beautiful Adam Hughes covers?
Yes.
In 2004. Do you know who wrote that?
Wasn't that Gail Simone or no?
Yes. So that was my first introduction, as we talk about loving Gail Simone on, everything, because I wasn't doing Birds of Prey at the time. I wasn't reading it. So my first Gail Simone book that I can think of, and you probably read before that, other things, but was Rose and Thorn. And I thoroughly enjoyed that miniseries. And I was like, yeah, this like, and I feel like that miniseries at the time was just a mini to keep the trademark in bloom. You know what I mean? And that was it. But interesting.
Definitely. And, obviously Beckie mentioned some key issue numbers there from what we're going to be coming up upon in Lois Lane. And again, it is some of the most notorious Lois Lane stories out there. So, I say be forewarned, be forearmed. Get ready for the next couple of weeks, folks.
Yeah, they may be so awkward you turn purple, Joe.
It was a very popular color back in the 70s. What could I tell you?
Who knew?
So let's get into what we read from this past week. Todd, where would you like to begin?
I'd like to start with the book I was looking forward to most, which was Ain't No Grave #1, written by Scotty Young, art by Jorge Corona. This is the story of, I don't think they give her settled down name, but this character is the Revolver Ridge Rider. She's a wife and mother, who's kind of settled her oats after being a wild, maybe outlaw kind of a deal. And that's the version of the story, kind of the Unforgiven take that they say. And it's told in flashback as she's making this travel to go somewhere. And she meets like this family along the way, and she just, lets them go because she seems very evil at this point. But then we see her backstory that she has a husband and child, and she's like I said, gotten rid of her wild ways. But maybe she's like sick because she's coughing up blood, and they do this bit and they keep jumping back and forth with it, and you end up finding out that she is going to be passing away. And so instead of spending her last days with her family, which should be touching and everything like that, she makes this idea that she's going to take this trip to Cyprus. The husband's begging her to stay, kind of a deal, like, stay here. Instead, the doctor doesn't, says this isn't good for you. She's like, I have to do it. And along the way, she ends up meeting like this ghostly character, the Beacon, who's trying to like bring her into water, which is like the end of everything, apparently, like when you meet your maker. And she's like, no, I have to do this. And she gets to the town of Cyprus, and like weird things are happening. And the reason she goes to Cyprus, I'm not going to spoil, but in this character situation, I've seen, this story told many times, like the character has to do something, and the thing that they're going to do to save themselves, I've seen a couple of times. But the way this is laid out, I'm really interested in. It's like a magical Western, so I'm okay with that. I like the story. It was very quick, very concise. I'll say that. It's not confusing. It's fast. You'll read through it in a zip. So I was like, all right, they're just setting the ground rules. Now I want to see where it goes from here. But my only real problem with it a couple of times was the art. There's like a couple of times I can't tell what's going on. I don't know if it's the artist or the colorist, but the one that really stands out for me is when she gets to Cyprus and she has the coin to get her into the city. There's a guard, a watch thing, and it gets up and it's so like big and burly and has so many things on it, I can't see all the stuff that it is. And I guess that's part of what you're not supposed to be able to make everything out, but I also just it gets lost in my eye. I can't see it. And I was like, okay, this is kind of confusing, but otherwise I like the art and I like the overall feel of the story. I'm going to keep going with it. It's the first real Scotty Young thing I've read. I enjoyed it, but it's just a solid beginning is what I would say.
Yeah, I'm not as a Western guy as you are. I definitely get into some of the Western stuff through you. But at 40 pages and a $6 cover price, this felt a little light.
Definitely.
This definitely felt padded. Now, what it was padded with was some very beautiful art. And this is not a knock on Scotty Young. Scotty Young, I would say, is probably in one of my top 5 favorite artists. I haven't read a lot of his stuff that he's written. And, you want to bring this up, we'll bring this up. We'll talk about it. But this didn't knock my socks off. It looked really nice. I was kind of sad that there was no Scotty Young variant cover on it, which would have been perfect. Mm-hmm. For there to be, because, at least I would have been tempted to pick that one up as well. But, like I said, just a little light for its cover price and page length. I feel Fair as enough. Though, an editor could have trimmed this a little bit. So maybe it's not Scotty Young's fault, right?
It could be, yeah, could be.
So the book I was most looking forward to coming out this week was Captain America #9 by J. Michael Straczynski, with art by Jesus Sayas. Now we came out, we really liked, I think you and I could speak for you, Todd, and say that you and I probably liked the first 6 issues of what Straczynski did here quite a bit on Cap.
Right.
We didn't talk about issues 7 and 8, but 7 and 8 was kind of setting up where we're going here with 9. And we did get a little bit of mythology and mysticism added in.
Right.
And it fit because I think of the first 6 issues, if we look at those first 6 issues together, with 75% of the stuff that I love about Cap and 25% of the magic, the mysticism, that sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then issues 7 and 8 felt like it was leaning almost like 50-50, maybe even 60-40 toward like the mystical, magical stuff, right?
Right.
And it's to set up where Cap is going, I would presume, for at least the next 6 issues, with being tasked by Lyra. I guess it was the embodiment of life.
Right. The brother of the embodiment of death to the brother of the embodiment of death.
And she is tasking Cap with putting together a team to prevent death from attacking her. Right?
Right.
So we're going to be introduced to some new characters, some new concepts, putting Cap into some interesting spots. We get some good storytelling bits, like there's one of the characters that Cap has a conversation with who does a spike throwing act in Lyra's show. Mm-hmm. And when talking about the tattoos that he has, he tells a story about how, mutation goes all the way back to cave people and the first people that were able to speak or form words, right?
Yep.
And I thought that was an interesting bit. I thought the origin story of the first person that Cap meets for the team was interesting and gave you enough of pathos or empathy for that character, who gets introduced in the back half of this issue. That you care about him. You get to see him and Cap in action as the little village that he's in gets attacked. I'm not loving the mysticism stuff now.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm going to touch on the gene, the Fox P2 gene or whatever it was, which is the thing that it was the mutation that gave man the ability to talk. And I thought that was a great bit in the mutant talking about, if it wasn't for that, man, might not be here. And, the ones that couldn't talk got overwhelmed by the ones who could because they could fight better together and everything like that. And he goes, what people don't understand is mutations move the species along, and I thought it was all great. And then I looked it up, and the gene is real, and he's basically explaining what it is, and it's true. So I love when I do get an education reading a comic, so that's fantastic. But I'm with you. I feel like the first 6 issues, and this is the best way I can explain it, the first 6 issues, and we liked them more, was not because they were mystical. It was just so happened that classic Cap, everything we loved about him, had to fight something mystical, and that was out of his realm. And I'm like, okay, needs to get help from Doctor Strange. I can understand all this. He's out of his element, fish out of water, love it. But now when you put him in, he's like the agent of mysticism to do something. I'm like, no, I think, I'm not feeling that as much as I like the story. I love that he cares about a penguin as much as a person. He's like this cute little penguin. I got to save him kind of a deal. There's a bit with that in the book. I'm like all around really gay, but I just feel like I know sometimes you want to do new stuff with characters. Sometimes it doesn't work. And I feel if we could minuscule the mystic stuff that he's just putting a team together to stop something, I think that would make it more palatable, if that makes any sense.
It does. So it's not like it doesn't work, because it works, right? It was an enjoyable story. I felt for the characters. I liked the bits that we talked about. You brought up about the thing with the penguin. There's a through line through the issue with that that has a payoff in this issue, which builds into the greater story of everything that's going to be going on without giving away spoilers or anything else like that. Mm-hmm. And I think from what I got out of Straczynski's writing of Cap in those first 6 issues, that we're going to be okay, unless this completely goes off the rails and he turns Cap into a mystical character.
Right.
Then we have a problem. I think Cap as, the one who's, as you said, the fish out of water, the one who needs the help to do the mysticism stuff. If there's a path to get Cap to understand the mystical side of the Marvel Universe, great. And he comes out of it as a stronger Steve Rogers, Captain America, red, white, and blue, I have a shield and I punch Nazis sort of thing.
Right.
We're cool. But then if Straczynski's like, well, we're going to throw Cap on his ear and he's going to become like the new Doctor Strange or something like that.
Yeah, Captain America, Steve Rogers' Sorcerer Supreme doesn't have a ring to it.
No. And I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen.
No, I'm with you.
But if that does happen, I'm not gonna read the book anymore.
Right. I'm with you.
But like I said, I like J. Michael Straczynski. I'll definitely try his superhero stuff. I love Cap. He's one of my favorite characters. Going all the way back to, I'm not as dyed in the wool as some other folks that were reading them back during as it was coming out, like the Mark Gruenwald days or picking up in trades or whatever it was. My first Cap writer was Mark Waid, and Mark Waid is the gateway writer for a lot of characters for me.
Or if you were reading it back when Volkswagen was, making the Beetle, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, I'm with you. And I will say this. I just do want to touch on the main cover for a second, which is Cap with his back to the thing. I remember when they promoted this cover 2 months ago. You know how now, because the mystical thing, when they're in the theater that's magical or whatever, the shield is see-through while he's there? And when he's out in the real world, it's the classic metal shield. You can't see through it and everything. And I remember being on pages like on Facebook and on websites that people saw this issue and saw the cover. And they were like, oh, my God, look how dumb that is. You could see his arms through the shield. Don't they know that it's solid and metal and painted? This is the dumbest cover ever. The worst. And I'm like, I looked at them and I kind of was like, at the time, because I didn't know they were doing this. And I'm like, yeah, the cover does, I get it. It's weird. But maybe my brain went to, honestly, like, as I'm getting older, maybe there's something in the story that it is. And we reread the story and that's the way it works. And that's why I'm just so like, and it came up to like, we talked before about the Superman costume and 007. It's like people just jumping out there and with no knowledge of what's going on, and they have wild opinions. But I really like this cover because I like the artist, and I just wanted to mention that while we were doing this issue.
Yeah, save like one or two Facebook groups, Todd. Stay out of most Facebook groups on comic groups on Facebook.
I do. I don't join any. What they do is, because I'm in 3 or 4, they'll be like, hey, have you seen this one, if that makes any sense? And it was the Captain America picture. And I was like, oh, I like this run of Captain America. And, oh, my God, I went into the comments, Joe. That's what you should just tell me. Don't go into the comments, Todd.
If those are the worst Facebook comments you saw today, then, Todd, then you had a lucky day.
Joe, you know what? Because of the way I stream my social media, I have a lot of lucky days. A lot of lucky days.
I'm glad. I worry about you sometimes. So that's what we read from this past week. Let's get into what we're looking forward to coming out this week. If you head over to longboxheroes.com, every Tuesday around noon Eastern time, we put up the pull post, which is a link to all the books that are coming out this week. Whether you get your books in print, whether you get them digitally, whether you get them sent to your home, however it is that you get your books, be forewarned, be forearmed, know what's coming out this week. Todd and I attempt to guess what the others most looking forward to coming out this week. Todd is currently in the lead over me with one correct guess. Let's see how things are going to shake out here going forward.
I'm looking over your list. Is the book you're looking forward to most Doom #1, Joe?
No, it's not.
Oh, what is it?
My Bad Escape from Peculiar Island #1.
Oh, okay. If that comes out this week, I'll let you know.
Well, it was on Lunar's shipping list, and I did get the promotional materials from the publisher saying that it is shipping this week, so I'll trust the publisher.
Okay. Because I literally looked at Mark Russell tweet from 3 days ago. Hey, Escape from Peculiar Island being released later this month. And I was like, well, if it was 2 days ago, why wouldn't he say this week?
I don't know. I'll go with the publisher. I'll just say that.
All right. What is your backup book?
Go ahead.
It disappeared. Say that book disappeared tomorrow. It's not coming out. What's your backup?
Redcoat #2.
Okay, fine. Then I'll take the loss.
Okay.
That's great. But if that book's not at my comic shop when I go tomorrow, and not because they didn't order it, there would be trouble. I'd be like, I want a recount. I'd go full Adam on you. I'll tell you that right now.
Do I? What about a review copy from the publisher dated the 15th?
That doesn't count. If it doesn't come out, the street date, if I can't buy it in a shop on that day, I don't care about a review copy.
All right.
I'm doing a bit, or am I? But anyway.
You never know. I didn't hear no one ringing a bell, so it could be anything, right?
Right.
I think the book that you're most looking forward to coming out is that Doom #1. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's a Doom book. It's Todd. Come on. What are we talking about?
My book is My Bad Escape from Peculiar. No, yeah, it's Doom. Like, I saw that. I'm all over it. So
yeah, I'm looking at the email right here from the publisher. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It even says in the email that they sent me on May 9th, it says, out in stores on May 15th. I don't know why the publisher would lie to me like this, but
I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
Because Midtown would have it.
Yeah.
Would say, oh yeah, we're not getting that book, or doesn't have it on their list of weekly books this week.
So this, and again, this is where we run into problems.
Exactly.
We've talked about this before, where some of these indie books, where they're handled both by Diamond and by Lunar, and it depends on who your retailer decides to get that particular publisher from. Mm-hmm. If your publisher decides to get it from Lunar, then they got it this week. If your store decides to get Ahoy books from Diamond, then they might not get it this week.
Right. I can't wait to see you with your photo with tomorrow's paper and your copy.
I'll have it.
Okay.
I'm printing out the PDF as we speak.
Okay.
So while you're over at longboxheroes.com, be sure to check out all the other stuff that Todd and I are up to, whether it be past episodes of this show, past episodes of Longbox Heroes After Dark, and of course our current ongoing Todd and Joe Have Issues, where we are rereading all of Gail Simone's Secret Six. We are currently in the midst of the ongoing series, issue 3, published date January of 2009. I lamented in the Have Issues post that I love this cover and I needed to find the quote-unquote virgin cover of this.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't have all like the logos and everything else. It's just this cover, the art by itself. Right. And I went back searching on message boards for DC solicitations from 2009, and I found it.
Did you really?
I did. Because I remember back in the day, and even still today, like when the early solicitations for stuff come out, you'll get the covers of books without the trade dress and stuff on them. Mm-hmm. And I went and I searched and I found it. I just went, I looked, like I did my gazintas. I'm like, okay, if this had a cover date of January of 2009, means it would have been in the November 2008 solicitations. So I just looked up December 2000, DC November 2008 solicitations. I found that image on a message board, and I have my unstripped version of that cover to put on my desktop of my computer.
Oh, good.
Yes. So again, this is the continuation of our first story arc, where the Six have broke out of Alcatraz, the Tarantula, because the Tarantula has the card, and Junior wants the card. Does the card even exist, Todd? And
everybody thinks it does, apparently.
Well, so enough people think it exists for them to go after the Six to try to get them.
Mm-hmm.
And even the people that don't believe that the card exists still probably want the money or the risk or the thrill or the whatever it is. And there's a lot of little plot lines and through lines and character bits and everything else like this. But this issue is pretty much straightforward with the Tarantula's origin, her backstory, and not only that the card is real, but what the card is.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that at the end of the discussion, right?
Right.
Obviously, what so much of this book hangs its hat on is the character stuff. The fact that the Six themselves are villains, they're bad people, they're deplorable. When Tarantula refuses to fess up in regards to where the card could be, they're like, well, we have instructions not to harm you, but we know where your sister lives, and we could just go there and kill her if you don't tell us. Now, whether or not they were actually going to do it, they certainly said that they were going to do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I do like when they're asking, like, what's the card? And she basically ends up telling them the origin of how she got the card, because they kind of saved the reveal. But I do love when they're like, and Ragdoll's like, well, why does everybody want this card so badly? And she said, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And then Ragdoll says, I make it a rule to believe every ridiculous thing that comes out of a beautiful woman's mouth. Me and Ragdoll have a lot in common, Joe. I love that line. I was like, I feel you, Ragdoll. I feel you. But, yeah, I do like what you were talking about there.
So, we get those bits. We get the constant back and forth in regards to what Catman did to those poachers. Mm-hmm. We get a little bit less jokey of a dead shot this issue. We get a little bit more forceful of a scandal in this issue. And we get a little bit more overbearing father out of Bane in this issue.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Because he ends up saying, like, what she needs, as a man in her life. And Deadshot said in the last issue, she's like, that's not, her type. She doesn't like men. She's like, no, more of a father figure. And I can't find out if this is, at this point, rereading this, I can't figure out if it's creepy or caring, or a little from column A and a little from column B, Joe.
Okay. Spoilers for the entirety of this series, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're just reading this along with us for the first time, this is very creepy.
Right.
This is very unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
But spoilers for 33 issues from now, it pays off.
Right. It's just so well done. Listen, and you know me, I love Gail Simone's work, and I don't nitpick it often. The only problem I really have is when Catwoman has the people who killed the lions, and he even says they weren't my cats. I'm just doing this
yes,
because you killed the cats, the lions. And he makes them, blindfolds them, and puts them in all the bear traps, in the middle of the bear traps, and tells them to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, you know what I would have done? I would have walked, and I would have had no problem. It's like, so if I walk out of here and I don't run into any of these traps, I'm good. You're going to let me go. Yes. I'm not lifting my feet. I'm sliding them forward. And when I touch metal, I'm turning. I looked at this and I went, this is the easiest thing to get around. I don't know why. That's my Joe nitpick of the year, by the way.
Well, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a nice death trap in theory.
Right.
And I think with maybe even another half a page, there could have been a better explanation as to why that wouldn't have been the way that they can get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're dealing it with mostly in flashbacks from Catman's point of view, so I hear you.
That's all. I just listen, 30-some issues of home runs, you know what I mean? Like, I just I don't know why that bothered me, but I'll let it
go. We're introduced to Jeanette, who they don't tell us, but she is the sixth member of the Secret Six, right?
Well, they said they're going to meet the sixth member along the way, and they say that, they kind of going to hook up with her at some point, right?
Right. So this is a brand new character. Definitely seems to be someone who is up to some ill repute, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best I could say that in this clean show of ours.
Just some sketchy stuff.
Yes. We get a bit where Cheetah shows up, and I think Gail's writing and Nicola Scott's art puts over how much of a threat Cheetah is.
Yep, because they're like, hey, go get her. What, you want me to punch the woman who could take a shot from Wonder Woman? I don't think we're going to win this one,
Yes. And the six only get away from her only because who's the Electro knockoff who comes?
That's Bolt.
The Bolt, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Electro knockoff.
No, Electro's a Bolt knockoff.
Oh my goodness. So the only way that they're able to beat Cheetah is that Bolt shows up and and again, he's got electricity powers, but he's not very bright.
Mm-hmm.
So they use him as a distraction to get away from Cheetah. And they got the card. They went to the place in Petaluma where it was. It's the size of a playing card. There's words on it. It's in Aramaic. It's from Neron, who we all know is the DC universe, like superhero universe version of the devil. And it's a get out of hell free card.
Yep. That's the 30th anniversary I want of Underworld Unleashed, Joe. But yeah, like that's why all the big guns, all the evildoers, even the people on the team, they're like, this is a team that, even if you don't believe, the chance to believe kind of a deal is going to make. And they hint at it. They hint at what this card is so hard through this whole issue, as they talk about redemption and all the terrible things. Are like, I want this. He's like, because Bolt's like, I've boiled people alive with electricity, and you've done this and I've done that. And I'm like, when you know what it is going in, it is so telegraphed. But if you don't know what it's going in, it's beautifully done, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
So good issue, Joe. That Gail Simone can write.
She certainly can. This is a great issue, and even if this was being read in the collection, the 6th issue, whatever it was, there's a great punch cliffhanger end of that story. And there are writers that can do writing for the trade and writing for the single issues very well. And I think Gail is at the top of the list of folks that can do just that.
Right.
So next week is issue 4. I'm looking forward to it. We're still a month away from the omnibus coming out, and when the omnibus comes out, we'll all play a little catch up, thumb through it, and see how we feel, right?
Yeah, right.
So while you're over at longboxheroes.com, of course, you can certainly support us in many sundry ways. You can buy a shirt, a pin, a sticker from us. Reach out to me in any way that you can. We'll work out a deal. I'll get you some shirts. I'll get you some pins. I'll get you some stickers. You can make any and all of your eBay purchases through our affiliate link. This page contains affiliate links for eBay. We may receive a small commission on purchases that you make. You could use the affiliate link at any time to buy anything you want on eBay and support us at the same time.
Yeah.
But the most bestest and fun way to support us is to sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/longboxheroes. For as little as $1 a month, you are going to get 2 bonus shows from Todd and myself every month. One is Previewing the Past, where we look at 30 years ago, this month's previews catalog. We have updates and gaps to fill in when we record for June of 2000 or for 1994. But this week we'll be recording Comic Book Oddities, the sci-fi original based on the Marvel horror character Man-Thing. We'll be recording this weekend. And Todd has some updates for us there in regards to maybe, because like right now we have over the next 3 years planned out on the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
I think Todd's looking to add another year onto the wheel.
Probably, at least.
So again, that's $1 a month, $5 a month. It's going to get you those 2 shows 2 weeks before everyone else. It's going to get you After Dark 2 days before everyone else, so you can listen to the shows in the correct listening order. No matter what level that you go in on the Patreon at, you are going to get the full scans of those previews catalogs that we discuss on Previewing the Past. There's a $100 level there. It's a goof. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. Go find out for yourself.
Right.
So with that out of the way, it's time to get into TV talk.
Yes, it is. And we're
going to be talking about the Doctor Who.
Yep, the 2 first episodes, the newest season. Even though I consider the special episode 1, I hate when they do that because you really need it as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I look forward to all your input, Joe, as we go. So,
well, obviously you're the Doctor Who man. I'm the Doctor Who piker. I will say, the intention was to have my wife watch this, and I don't want to spoil too much in regards to our Doctor Who discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to tip my hand too much, but obviously I had to watch these for the show, of course, so I was under a little bit of a time crunch to watch these. I did not get a chance to watch them with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
When she's ready, I got no problem watching these 2 episodes again.
Okay. Okay. So the first one is called Space Babies. And it's like, it literally ends 2 seconds after the special. And he's explaining to her that he's got a spaceship, time machine, all that. And he goes, I'm going to take you to the prehistoric era. Outside that door is the prehistoric era. She's like, oh, I'm afraid to go out there because what about the butterfly effect? I step in a butterfly. It's like, I know what I'm doing. And in a great bit, she goes outside, she steps on a butterfly. She turns into like a reptilian creature, which is some great effects, the makeup and everything. The doctor blows life back into the butterfly and fixes because he brings it back to life. And she doesn't even realize anything happened because she had a total change of, temperament and everything, personality. And he goes back in. She's like, what happened? Everything's going to be fine. And he turns on the anti-paradox switch or whatever he called it, which was absolutely hysterical. I really like that bit because it just goes, everything's going to be fine. I know we're a time traveling show. Don't overthink it. You didn't happen to overthink it, did you, Joe?
No, again, I didn't overthink it. I just like the line where he's like, who goes around stepping on butterflies? What do we have to worry about?
Yep, and she does. Now, I'm not going to hit everything, but I will say the next, 8 minutes of this show is really good. And like he's taking her, he's like, where do you want to go? And she's like, this date. He's like, ooh, that's a future date. We're going to go. And he does an info dump that I think is done really, really well. Do you know what I mean? Like if you didn't watch the past Doctors, it's like, okay, my family's gone, my planet's gone, I have 2 hearts, I'm from Gallifrey. Like he gives it, but it's not like the way I did it. It's told in bits over like while they're figuring out where they are on this space station. I'm like, okay, I think that's a really good introduction. Maybe if this is your first episode, I still think you should watch the first episode of the special, but I thought that was really good, at least. You know what I mean?
Right. And there was bits at the beginning where he's, before they go to prehistoric time, where he's explaining a little bit of it. So it's like a through line between their conversation through the show. And it's a way to put, as you mentioned, exposition into the course of the show without it feeling forced. Yeah.
Well, that's what and all joking aside, that's what the companions were for, was to have the plot explained to them. Anything that you needed is the doctor explains it to the companion, which is explaining it to the fan. So, and through these 2 episodes, I'm not going to touch on all. There's a lot of coincidence. That was the hint of the special. And with Ruby, there's a lot of coincidences going on because like this one has space babies, orphans. The doctor's an orphan from the Timeless Child. He's like all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, won't hit it all, but I kind of like that they're giving you that. They find out that they're on a baby making station, which is what they do in the future for humans, but they find out that it's been shut down and they find that it's been abandoned, but some of the babies that were left there grow up, but they grow up mentally, but they don't grow up physically. So they're talking babies, which I thought was kind of funny. It's an interesting visual, and even though the mouth effects don't work so much, but I found that funny. And I love the fact that the doctor ends up having a doctor conversation with them. They're like, oh, so we didn't grow up. Are we wrong? And the doctor's like, nobody was made wrong. Like nobody, which is something he's said before. He's done it. Like he does a couple of things where he mentions like, being the only version of you is a superpower. And you didn't watch the 12th Doctor's episode, but his run was the end of the Bleak run, was fear was the superpower. And I think this Doctor saying that being unique and special is a superpower is definitely to show you that this is a different show than what it's been while being the same. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense to you, though. Do you know what I mean, Joe?
Right, because I don't have the breadth of knowledge and everything else of all these past Doctors, and I only have 3 Doctors worth, maybe 4.
Right.
I got bits and pieces when we did like the 1 Doctor per month way back when.
Right. Yeah. It's just something that stood out to me that if anybody who watched it would kind of get. And I do like the bit where she's like, so you're telling me that they abandoned this place, but it's illegal to shut the baby making factory down, but they won't take care of the babies after they're born. And I love that's as political as this episode got, because they could have got into the weeds on this one. And I was like, okay. But the station takes care of all the baby's needs. It wipes their butts. It wipes their noses, Joe.
Mr. Thompson.
Right. And they're what do you call it? Governed by nanny to a computer nanny. And along the way, there's a monster in the basement too, Joe. That's kind of cool. Looks a bit, would you say like a xenomorph, maybe an alien looking thing, like the Sigourney Weaver ones? I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit more toothy, but yeah, sure.
Yeah. So there's still a little bit. So it's kind of got an alien feel. So they go off and they're going to investigate things. And the doctor ends up talking to Ruby and says, I could pretty much take you anywhere, but the one place I can't take you is to your, like, the day on when you were abandoned at the church. And he tells her that, and it starts snowing in the space station. She's like, there's something really weird with you. We're going to figure out what this is about, kind of a deal. And they go look to see what the space station is, and they find a real person on the space station. The nanny isn't a computer. She's a real person. But she says there's a monster downstairs, and the space station only has so much time, and they're going to pass away, and I'm going to pass away, but I'm going to go first and give them my oxygen and my food. So he's like, well, why don't you go be a refugee? She's like, well, they don't come for refugees. You got to show up on their doorstep. Well, there's a planet nearby, but space stations don't move. The long and the short of it is they end up going through the space station to try and fix it. And they find the monster, and they figured out what the monster was. That this whole thing is the computers giving them a story for the kids. There's a nanny, there's babies, there's danger, which is a monster in the basement. And it's all because the ship is recycling the snot that they're cleaning up. And the monster is a booger man, the bogeyman, literally, they were calling it, which is a fun little reveal and everything like that. And they go, okay, they have to trap the monster before they can fix the thing. And then the nanny, the real nanny, wants to blow the monster out into space. And the doctor's like, any other time, maybe a different me would have done that. But everybody is unique and special, as they do in the episode. And he ends up saving the monster. And then he uses the gas from the babies to use it to bottom burp, I think is what it's called, the space station to the planet nearby so they can be refugees. And then basically he takes Ruby back, because I like when he's like, well, you will take me to my mother. He's like, I told you I can't. She goes, no, you're going to take me to my mother that adopted me. And I like that bit too. And as they're leaving, the doctor's scanning DNA of Ruby because he's not sure. She thinks she's not human. I don't know. There's something definitely going on. I thought this was a fun episode. Not the best episode, but it had laughs. It had scares, some high quality effects. Really good.
So this was an episode of a TV show with talking babies, a booger monster, and our heroes escape by igniting all of the babies' poopy diapers.
Right.
This is your famous Doctor Who, Todd?
I'm going to hang my hat on the next episode more, okay. But it's not, I mean, I could show you worse. Would you like to watch worse?
No. I'm not saying that this was bad. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that this was very silly. I liked it. It's very silly. And, obviously I'm not as steeped in the lore of Doctor Who as anyone. I'm probably the least steeped in the lore of anyone that watches Doctor Who outside of my wife, who did not watch these episodes yet. That being said, there was enough in here for the lore people for them to be like, okay, it wasn't that bad of an episode because we got this thread and we got that thread and we got this clue and we got that clue, and we get to the end of the season, I trust Russell T Davies that all these things are going to pay off. Whereas me, I'm just like, oh, it's all a bunch of silly sci-fi nonsense. It's fun, right? Let's have some fun, everybody.
And I like it. And when I say, like, because people will probably bag on it, I'm like, but it is fun. It has heart. It sets up some of the storyline. I don't know. Like I said, it's an interesting first issue, and I always say people forget that this is a British children's show.
Yes.
Which I always hung my head, watched British TV because I always thought British TV was way smarter. So a British children's show is as smart as a lot of regular adult shows on our networks. So that's why I'm like, yeah, it's all this, but it's for kids too. It's not Jar Jar Binks, but remember, it is for kids. So I don't know.
Sure.
But the next episode, I'm going to say, I'm going to immediately kind of just say I loved and get it out of the way, which is the Devil's Cord. And it starts out, and I forget in the year, but maybe in the 30s. And there's this. Well, go ahead.
Okay. So, I went through my notes, right? I write everything down. I'm an analog person. Everything's handwritten, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this opening scene in the second episode takes place in specifically 1925.
Okay, I knew it was the 20s or the 30s.
There's a bit from the Christmas episode, which is a flashback or an old scene or something, that also takes place in 1925.
Ooh,
I don't think that's a coincidence, Todd.
Nope, probably not. But yeah, so there's a music teacher and a little kid, and he's teaching them, and he's bored.
I almost swore. The stuff with the toy man, the Neil Patrick Harris thing, right?
Right, yes.
When we get introduced to him, it's in 1925. That's what it is. Like I said, I almost
the toy maker, yes. The toy maker. Who might come up in this episode. So he's teaching the kid, and the kid's like, you got anything exciting? And he's like, oh, well, what about this? This was a chord that was outlawed, back in the day by the church, whatever. It's called the Devil's Chord. And he plays it. And it ends up releasing, I don't know the person's name, but they show up, and they're the maestro. And they say that this person was very smart, and the kid was a plant by them kind of a deal because the kid disappears. Had a weird name, Harbinger or whatever. And I like the bit on the paper where the name changes and everything. And proceeds to do talking to this teacher and says you're clever, you're the genius, the greatest composers ever. You figured out the hidden chord and this, and he's like, yeah. And he goes, and she goes, do you want me to release all that music? And he goes, yes. And they end up, I'm trying to do that right, if you get my meaning, ends up playing the thing, and the music comes alive and basically rips the life out of him because it's the sheet music kind of a thing, which was a great effect. And they say they're called the maestro, and we haven't seen anything yet kind of a deal. And in a great bit that I got goosebumps from, the maestro starts playing the Doctor Who theme with just a couple of notes on the piano, and then they play it through the opening.
Yes.
If how I said I love this episode, I was all in right here because I'll just say it. The maestro's performance makes Neil Patrick Harris's toy maker look like a boring, subdued, thoughtless, just actor part, if that makes any sense.
So, two things about this opening scene in this episode. One, do you remember what the genius, the guy who plays the Devil's Chord, do you remember what his name is?
No, I don't.
I have it written down, Todd, because his name is Tim Drake.
Oh, it must be related to Robin, but go ahead.
Now, as soon as the actor who plays the maestro shows up, I audibly gasped. Because I am intimately familiar with the catalog and history of the person playing them, Jinx Mongoose or Jinx Monsoon, because Jinx is a staple on RuPaul's Drag Race, one of the biggest names in the drag community. Jinx and their performing partner, Benda La Creme. I'm more of a Benda La Creme person. Benda is a little bit more, soft and a little bit more subdued than Jinx is. But again, not to say that I don't enjoy them both. But when Jinx showed up, I was like, oh my goodness. I go, it's Jinx. I was so excited. I was so happy to see Jinx in something. And Jinx does an unbelievable performance throughout the entirety of this episode. scenery chewing, threatening, overbearing, everything that a villain is supposed to be.
Fourth wall breaking. I'm with you, Joe, because I didn't know who this Jinx person was. You know what I mean? Like, not in my purview kind of a deal. But immediately in that, I don't have the exact time, 3-minute opening of that character, 4-minute opening, I got everything I needed to know. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, this character is not going to get worse. You know what and you know what I mean by worse. It's not like this character is going to peter out. This character is peaking at 15 in the first 3 minutes, not at 10, at 15. Just they're in the red in the RPMs, and I'm like, fantastic. And then it kind of like there's like the lull in the show because we get back to Ruby and the doctor, and the doctor's like, "Where do you want to go?" And they're like, "Let's see the Beatles record their first album in 1963, which is another important number." You know what I mean? So a date, so he's like, yeah. And he was like, well, is that a bad idea? He's like, I don't. And I love that the doctor always plays with people. He's like, yeah, that's a great idea. Why did I ever think of seeing the Beatles? Like, that's genius. So they're like, we're going to go back. And then they do a bit where they're like, oh, well, what about clothes? What about this? What about that? And like, okay, we got to get changed. That's a brilliant idea. She's like, I want a beehive. He's like, and the doctor says this, and I know it's in your notes, Joe. Oh, come on.
Todd, it's underlined and it's highlighted just so no one missed it.
I have, like, unlimited wigs or whatever he says.
No, he says, like, he goes, wigs? I've got wigs galore, he says.
Joe, I popped so hard knowing you were going to watch this, right? But, come on, when they come out, they look so mod and 60s and good. Like, they look good, man. You may hate the wig, but don't hate the player.
I really wanted their wigs to look worse.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad that they looked good.
Right.
And they looked period appropriate, you know?
Right. So they go to Abbey Road Studios, and they do the Abbey Road street cross and everything, and they go and they walk into the studio, and I like that they just, if you say you're going to take a cup of tea to somebody in England, you can get anywhere kind of deal. It's like carrying a clipboard in America, or I believe you've told me carrying, what is it when you're at a wrestling show? You could just walk in.
If you're wearing a black polo and you're carrying a box,
yeah,
you can get in anywhere.
Right, so that's the bit, and they get in, and they go see the Beatles, who look all exactly like the Beatles.
Oh,
and I don't know, this is the one time if they used it, I would accept it. We'll get to it. They play their song, and they're all ready to hear it, and they're all happy, and the song is garbage. Hot garbage. And they can't figure out what's wrong, and they go to a couple other studios to see what's going on. All the songs are garbage. If they didn't use AI to write those, that's the one time I would allow it. It's like, we need garbage written. Give us AI, because that's what those songs sounded like, that some chat GPT wrote Beatles songs, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
So they got to figure out what's going on. They're going to talk to, the most important Beatles, McCartney and Lennon. So they split up and go to them. And they end up talking. And they mention that music has been on the downswing for the last 40 years, and it's on its end. It's not going to happen anymore because they don't realize what it is, but something happened. And if they're like, if we could just make a few bucks out of this, we'll be happy, and we can go on and, the last gasps and have respectable jobs after this, which is some nice nods that the Lennon and the McCartney and everything like that. And they figure, well, if music's gone, then all this is gone and all that's gone. There's no more dancing. There's no more. We got to figure it out. So they put a piano on the roof. And Ruby, who wrote a song for two women lovers that broke up, she's like, I'm going to do this. And she ends up playing the song. And it's actually that's the one thing I will say is the music that's good in this is actually really good. And she plays it, and that, what would you call it, conjures the maestro. And it freaks the doctor out. and he ends up running away. Before that, he says they're on the roof, and he goes, I'm in this town over there. It's 1963, and there's where I am with my granddaughter. And he explains he has a granddaughter, which is the first mention in New Who of her ever. So she's showing up this season. That's all I'm going to say. If Ruby isn't the granddaughter, or somebody else might be the granddaughter. I'll get to that at the end of this episode.
Sure.
So I'm over there. And she's like, you have a family? He's like, yeah, I had a family. They're gone, but they probably were killed during whatever massacre this time with the Time Lords. So I thought that was interesting because I didn't know all of them were massacred. And she plays the song and they hide, and he does like the sonic screwdriver thing where he makes silence. And the bit where Jinx, the character, the maestro, I'm going to call the character the maestro because it'll make it easier for me, is doing the bit with the tuning fork and the ring on the finger. Such a great visual. And the doctor's scared and he's hiding. He even mentions the giggle, which was the toy maker. And puts the fork in the water and it ruins it all. But they almost get captured, but an old lady starts singing because she hears the song. And Maestro goes and kills that old lady like a wolf. You know what I mean? In a brilliant thing. And she like winks into the camera. I'm like, I love all this. Not that you will care. That old lady who gets killed was a costume designer on Doctor Who in the 70s, which I found was absolutely fantastic. They just gave her like a nice little extra job. So like, all right, we kind of figured music's gone, then what's going to happen to the world? The world's going to heck as they sing. See, they go to the future and they find out that without music, people turn on each other. There's a nuclear war. That's when they meet the maestro, and the maestro explains, I'm the kid of the toy maker. And, when you stopped him, that let loose the Pantheon, which maybe means there's more of these people around, like the toy maker's children or prodigy. And says, like, the doctor says, we need rules. You need to explain it to me. He does. The maestro does, and they end up going about the cord. It's missing, so kind of in a Mixolydic thing. They're like, if you can figure out the cord to send me back, we're all good. They're like, okay, we're going to go back and do it. They get the piano they wrote Abbey Road on, and they try to figure it out, but they're not smart enough. And there's the big battle between the doctor and Ruby and the maestro. To make a long story short, McCartney and Lennon figure out the final chord, sending Maestro away.
Yeah, and there's the bit where, obviously the battle is very visual. You mentioned earlier about how the Maestro uses the, whatever the scales, the music notes, whatever that
music lines.
Yeah, again, I'm not a musical person, so people who do know what that is called. Uses that as a weapon to tie people up, to lasso people, all sorts of things like that. So as the Doctor and Ruby are trying to figure out what that is, we're getting those visual representations of those notes. And then when they get to that last note and they miss it, that's when the Maestro kind of gets over on them, traps Ruby in a big bass, traps the Doctor in a bass drum. The piano gets kicked out. And that's when McCartney and Lennon stumble upon it. And when the Doctor and Ruby, were talking to McCartney and Lennon, failing point of this episode, the only thing that prevents it from getting an A+ is there was, not to say that there wasn't not enough Ringo, there was no Ringo in this.
He was in the studio.
They don't even say his name. They say George's name. Mm-hmm. George don't get no lines, but they say his name. Ringo's there, but they don't even say Ringo. The most important Beatle, the hottest Beatle in 2024, right?
Peace and love.
Right? No more autographs. But they talk about specifically Paul, when they're talking about like, okay, we just need to wrap this up and then we can go and get respectable jobs. And he says that there's something inside of him. Mm-hmm. There's that music, that whatever that is, that's inside of him. And then when the piano comes out and those visual representation of those notes are there, and that inspires Lennon and McCartney to finish the tune, which is the note that would send the Maestro back to wherever they came from. And again, it all ties in together, a little telegraphed, a little bit pun intended, one note of a story. That It's like, well, the Beatles don't. That we're going to see the Beatles create the music that made them famous. We get there, and because of what the maestro did, they don't want to create the music that made them famous, but they need to create the music that makes them famous to defeat the maestro. Whether they know it or not, I think we as the audience know it. But the way they get there was fun. It was an enjoyable ride.
Brilliant. Yes. And I love the bit that, like, you know, everybody says Beatles songs are too expensive to, like, use in whatever your show is.
Yes.
I love, because they even said, they're like, yeah, we had, like, Disney money. He's like, but we like the idea, like, we weren't going to use Beatles songs. So we had to do a story as to why we were going to meet the Beatles and they were going to play music, but it wasn't going to be any of their songs. And I was like, it was really genius to work around that. And I thought it was a funny little, like, bit that they did and everything. Mm-hmm. And it was really great. And then the doctor says, all right, this is all over. The Beatles are going to be the Beatles. The world is saved. But there's always a twist at the end, Joe. And they do a dance number, which is the second dance number of this season? Yeah. And song thing, which I'm fine with because I think it's going to be an overarching thing. But also the fact that now I'm looking hard at the twist at the end of the season. You know what I mean? Because you don't lay something that there's always a twist at the end. And you're not going to have a twist at the end of your season. But that being said, you know how I said before the doctor did what fear is your superpower, now being unique is your special superpower. And each doctor is different. What I love about this and him, like, walking back to the TARDIS, and they go across Abbey Road and they do the step where they step like 3 times and then do 3 steps back and kind of do a shuffle. Each actor brings their own unique thing to the doctor. Like, you know, even if it's as stupid as the 7th Doctor knew how to play the spoons, I'm going to bring that to the doctor. I can do that. I did that in vaudeville. I can do it. But the doctor's always been a nerd. He's always been an outcast. He's never been cool, Joe. The doctor has never been cool. And the actor who brings, like, the life to the doctor in this episode, he exudes cool at times. And I'm like, I'm all for it. That's different, new, you know, it's not so far from the doctor that I'm like, I can't handle it. I just love that he moves like he's smooth. That's the best way to put it. He's not a geek. He's not a nerd. He's awesome.
Now, the other thing that I want to mention here is, as you say this, and you could probably answer this question a little bit better for me as I pose this to you, and I agree with you that this actor, and again, I apologize, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name.
Tuti Natwa.
Okay. So he exudes a confidence, a coolness, a suaveness, a smoothness. Is it a coincidence that in the 2 episodes that we watched here, there was bits in both episodes where he had to show extreme fear? Is that something that the doctor that I remember, the little bit that I watched, in the face of danger, the doctor always stood up, never backed down. And in the 2 instances that we get our villain, our adversary, our whatever in these episodes, he immediately runs. He runs in fear. And they explained it in the episode as to why he does. If it happens in the 3rd episode, I think they're trying to tell us something.
Right, because in the baby episode, he says that's weird because the monster is designed to scream at a sound pitch that's designed to incur fear. So you're like, okay, that can do it. But then he says when he meets the maestro, Ruby's like, why? He's like, I'm scared because the maestro is the son or the prodigy of the toy maker. The toy maker ripped me in half and I bioregenerate. He goes, I can't survive that again.
And the doctor says the only way that I survived that was by a trick, by a luck, the game of catch. I tricked them. I'm not going to be able to trick them again.
Right. I get one trick with each of them because he did the trick with the white noise or the muting the sound that tricked the maestro. It's like, I can't do it again. You only get one. And I don't know if you get, one trick, but I do like that. So he can't constantly use all that. But yeah, I'm waiting to see if that's I didn't pick that up. I do like the idea of that. But that being said, the last thing I'll say is that the person the granddaughter might be is there's an actress who's been in 2 of these episodes already No, 3. She was in the special. She was in when she wasn't in Space. Okay, so we're only on her 3rd, and she's already been in the Beatles one. She was in. No, she was in the Tenet episode. The actress plays the lady who was Newton's cleaning lady. There's an actress. She plays that, and she sees the doctor. The same actress plays a heckler in the special where we meet Ruby. And that actress plays a lady who's serving tea during the dance. There's always a twist at the end. Same actress, 3 appearances. That's not by happenstance. That's not just a fluke. That actress is going to show up again.
This one was a little bit more ham-fisted as well. Beginning of the episode where the maestro shows up and the kid, the harbinger, who was just created to get the genius Tim Drake to play the note, he shows up as one of the people in one of the rooms in the dance number at the end. That
right,
kid.
Probably in the old 20s outfit, too, I think.
He shows up in the 20s outfit. He peeks out of a door, looks at what's going on, and then closes the door.
Which makes me wonder if that's trying to establish that the maestro's still around, or that this character is another one of the prodigy, you know what I mean? Of the Pantheon or whatever.
Or something. I
don't know. Don't care. This episode, because of Jinx, the maestro, rockets to one of my favorite episodes ever. I don't know if it's because the last couple of seasons I didn't care. Like, I wasn't a big fan of because I thought it was very different. And this feels like very like close to my heart kind of a deal. Like it's the way you made pasta sauce back in the day. It's exactly like I love. So we're back. Or if it was that good, I don't know. But all around, this rockets way up on my list of episodes.
Right. And then, of course, we go back. It's established here in this episode in regards to the doctor having a granddaughter. Right?
Yeah.
And there's speculation online already of who that granddaughter is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to get into that? Or do you want to wait not to, do too spoilery talk?
I don't know who it could be. Because do you know about the granddaughter? Because you probably don't remember. I'll just get the history out really quick right here. Because when it first showed up, the doctor and his granddaughter, Susan, were stranded in 1963. And he even sends it. I'm over there in a junkyard. And he meets the 2 teachers. And he fixes the ship at that time. And they don't believe him. And he ends up going off, but he can't control. He says, "You don't believe this is a time machine? I'm going to show you." And they go, but he can't control it, so he can't bring them back. So as this goes on, people leave, people stay. But the granddaughter ends up meeting somebody and she falls in love with them. And he says, after a season or so she was on, he goes, "You stay with her." He goes, "I'll come back someday." He's like, and it's a famous speech. There's clips of it. And he says, "You go with him. And, maybe someday I'll run into you." She never appears again, except in the 30th or the 35th anniversary. She shows up as a cameo. They got a bunch of people. And it's oh, okay. And she's 30 years older and she's dressed in the same outfit she wore when she was 16. It's not very good. You know what I mean? But they never acknowledged her ever again. So I think it's the last great mystery in Doctor Who from the original run. And I think you don't bring it up and mention it and have some interesting coincidences and stuff like that and the whole show, as they say, is about family, because he's talking to Ruby about family. He's you want to find your family, but your adopted family is your family, but you also want this. And I lost all my family. We're just 2 kind of orphans who are running through the galaxy. I'm she's showing up, but I don't know who's going to play her. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Does that make any sense? I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent.
That's all right. We'll wait till there's more clues. How about that?
Right. Do you have any speculation or just...
I saw people talking about it online that they're speculating that Ruby's adopted mother is the grandmother or the granddaughter.
That could be. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. That's the way that it all gets tied in together.
Right. And then there was that one lady at the end of the episode who broke the fourth wall again of the first special and said, what, you've never seen a time machine before?
Mm-hmm.
So like I think we're going to get like 17 possible people that it could be, if that makes any sense. So,
yep.
But we'll play along as we go.
Exactly.
So I think that's everything, though.
Yeah, I definitely think that's everything, everyone. I appreciate you hanging in there. Of course, we got TV talk back, so this was a little bit more of a episode than we were ready for, but I think that's okay because this was episode 710 of Longbox Heroes. For Todd, this is Joe saying thanks for listening, and we'll see you all here next week.
Remember, be a faucet, not a drain.
You're listening to the soon-to-be-named network, the Lamborghini of podcast networks.
The Rob is a Longbox hero. The Rob is a Longbox hero. He gives us five stars.